Hi, thanks so much for inviting me. It's my first time here in the Pacific Northwest, as I'm so happy to be here. It's absolutely stunning. So this is learning and feeling overwhelmed, and I will talk about my learning process. I'm Lourdes. I'm a front-end developer working at RGA Buenos Aires. Here is my Twitter handle if you have any comments or questions. Well, as he said, I'm organizing the first CSS Conf in Argentina, which is going to be in just 4 days. So yes, tomorrow I'm flying back to Buenos Aires and run the conference, and yes, it's a great week for me. I also co-host the BA Frontend meetup every month in Buenos Aires, which gathers the UI, design, and front-end community. So this talk is how I dealt with anxiety and the pressure of the fast pace of the tech industry. I will talk about my feelings during my learning process and its ups and downs, about how I felt burnt out but at the same time guilty for not being up to date, about the times I felt insecure for not being a front-end hero, if it's that a thing at all, in a culture where there are a lot of people who seem to be paying more attention on the green part of the Red Hat account than the quality of your job. I will talk about all the things that I broke and the experiments that taught me something. And about everything, I will talk about how learning made me a more organized, patient person and taught me how to help other people. There is a constant pressure to learn new things and keep up to date with all the latest stuff. New frameworks, new platforms, new ideas of how to write code like Less, SAS, PostCSS, BEM, ITCSS, even tabs or spaces are on the play right now. They just keep coming out. Whenever you think you get better at certain methodologies, new ones come out and they are the new hotness. Really, there is a lot of pressure out there to learn new things, to spend all your time coding, to be the super developer. That's the super developer that I do. I'm not good at it, I know. After starting to code, I realized that new things were appearing faster than I could learn. And that's when I started to feel overwhelmed. Many times I felt physically and mentally tired while learning something and hitting the wall and saying things like, this is not for me. And then try to do an extra effort to continue. And regarding this, I knew I wasn't taking care of myself. So very soon, instead of learning, I was just frustrated and burnt out. There's a common belief that programming is so easy because a lot of people is doing it and new technologies and new stuff appear all the time. And it might seem that it's so easy from the outside, but we all know how much effort it takes. Learning to code is a process that never ends. It's not static at all. It changes and mutates every few months. I was hearing all the time, have side projects, contribute, work open source, and of course, that's a great way of learning new stuff. But I had to find some balance between learning and free and enjoyable time so I could get some new energy. About me, I'm a former designer, a college dropout, who one day I realized I was paying more attention to the developer's work than my own. And that's when I say, okay, I'm going on that direction. That GIF is not working, but it's Bilbo running. Okay. So, and that was difficult, but that was great. I remember to be thinking, okay, if I do this, I will be learning new technologies for the rest of my life. And that was intimidating, but so exciting at the same time. Yes, well, this is working now. Okay, so of course I had my ups and downs, and there were days when the imposter syndrome was really huge, but I always try to think that it's something that I really like and that it takes time. And regarding all this, I had to think, what's my goal and my main interest nowadays, and which ones used to be? And it's great to look at that difference, because it shows how your interest can change and evolve into something new. It's true that this industry is moving so fast that if we sit still, we are going to find ourselves more and more left behind. I remember to be reading those articles and blog posts, and it was like, what I'm not really using was CSS Weekly just posted yesterday. And that led to the fears. During the course of our lives, we all have fears. Fear of being rejected, fear of being criticized, fear of not knowing something you think is obvious to everyone else. I had to deal a lot of times with the ego of some people who will tell you how easy is something while you're struggling to do it. So besides facing the hard part of learning how to code, I had to face with their egos and my own insecurities. Okay, that's working. So while coding, there is while coding, there is always the fear of breaking everything up. What happens if I touch this? If I remove this line of CSS? It's like, oh dear, don't touch it, you'll never know. We all know how fragile a CSS codebase can be sometimes, and starting a refactor where we want to take some unused lines of code out can be a scary process. So let me ask you, how many of you have been afraid of breaking a CSS codebase while working a refactor? Raise your hands, please. So this year I have a story about this. This year I had to work on a very big project that was really well known for having a very messy code base. It was a huge platform where about 10 different developers had been working on it for about 4 years. And they let me the last refactor for me. Cool people, yeah, thank you. The code was really fragile and the specificity of the CSS was really high. So anything you touch could be affecting who knows what other section to the website. So the refactor for some sections was really complex, as I had to isolate some components in order to get some CSS independency. The fear of breaking everything was always there, and yes, I broke a lot of things during the process. Talking about this, as a developer, I make mistakes while coding a lot, all the time. So many of them that I had to get rid of the fear of breaking something and still working on that thing. I lost count of how many times I broke something at work and spent hours trying to fix it. But believe me that once I fix it, I remember what it was and never forget about it again. Sometimes I was passing the success phase, and then what I like to call the stagnation phase. And that's when you start learning something and everything goes smoothly, and at some point you feel you're not improving. That is, there is a task you cannot resolve, and it's taking you more time than you think it should. And that's when you started to feeling frustrated, questioning your career and everything. Dealing with insecurities in the beginning was something really hard to overcome for me. I felt that I knew so little. I knew that it was difficult, but it was starting to stop enjoying programming, and it was not good at all. But I knew that the effort was worth it, so I kept going. So one day I took a deep breath. One fine day I started to look for a solution that worked for me. I knew that what it works for me in these cases is to stop and have a little bit of organization. So the first thing that I did was to understand that programming is hard, that it's a process that takes time. It's not something you get over the night. I know I was being too hard with myself. So I took a look around and started talking with people. And very soon I could realize that what I was feeling was much calmer than I thought, that there were a lot of people with similar feelings. It's expected to feel that way. It's not just you. It's not your fault. Programming is hard. It also helped me to start having fun with being bad at learning. Although some stuff you have to learn isn't going to be funny. You're going to make mistakes once, twice, many times. But each time you will learn something at least. And sometimes the lesson is going to be what you shouldn't be doing. And that's always something. Some time ago, I had an experiment for doing new things on CSS, and that was much better because from the very beginning, the result, either good or bad, could show you something. We don't only learn from success, but also from failure. In my case, I learned a lot from failure. For example, take the case of post-CSS. It's quite new, and a lot of people is using it already. You have to evaluate if it's the right tool for your job right now. If it's not, it's okay. You won't be a bad developer for not using it. But it's a really good idea to keep your ears open and see how it goes. And meanwhile, you can play with it so you get the concepts. There was a moment where I started to pay more attention to architecture because the projects I was working on were big and really need a strong and good architecture. And regarding this, it was a bit awkward for me to see that those articles I was reading were from 2012-ish. I was like, damn, I'm reading this now. What kind of developer I am? But in my case, I can get the concept where I need it. If the need of applying that, it's there. There are a lot of YouTube tools that help me a lot to improve my skill. Sites like CodePen, where I could take a look at demos that someone else did and then try to reproduce them by myself. It's great to see how a single thing can be done in so many different ways. I knew that it's a good habit to dedicate a few hours every week to self-improvement. We pick this industry, so it's up to us to make it better. Becoming a good developer takes effort in your job and your spare time. It has to be something you like. So whenever I feel overwhelmed with something, I try to organize things so I can divide the big problem into small single things. So that way the task doesn't look so scary. With all this fast pace, we might feel that we have to know everything. And who can be comfortable with a huge idea? Even the greatest developers have to struggle with difficult bugs and errors in their own code. It might feel that as if everyone else knows what you're doing and you're the only one who's struggling, but that's nowhere near the truth. One of the things that helped me a lot was to start looking back from time to time. You will be amazed of how many things you have learned. For example, I took a look at websites I built like 2, 3, 4 years ago. And it was great to look at that code and start to see a lot of things I could improve on haste that code. Or even better, seeing that that thing that was so difficult for me a few years ago looks so easy for me now. And that was a really nice reward because whenever I thought I wasn't making any progress, when I was frustrated, I could clearly see that way the long run that I walked. I knew that for taking the leap, I had to get my hands to work. I had to get off my comfort zone and identify the little tricky excuses we all tell ourselves, like, I don't know it very well, I cannot use it at work, it's not supported yet. I knew that making stuff, it was how it was going to get better. So I had to go and build websites. It's great to train your brain to look for things that inspire you, like listening to podcasts, conference talks, reading articles, and see what other people are doing. And you will also realize they're working really hard too. I knew that in my case, I was lucky enough to have some idle time on the train or bus ride on my daily commute to start reading a newsletter and feeds and pay attention at what's sounding repeatedly. You can subscribe to newsletters like CSS Weekly or SAS News, where every few weeks you will get a lot of great articles that will inspire you to try new things out. While learning, I started one day to get inspired with side topics. At work, for example, I had to work a lot with CSS animations. And when I started to learn that, I could apply the syntax and learn, yeah, it was good, but my animations were kind of lacking of joy. So I started to read about animation itself, like comics, cartoon, videos, even physics. So I could apply those concepts into my animations and they look better. Another example I have, there was a moment when I realized I was paying more attention to all the new stuff and leaving the basics behind. And one day I wanted to start from scratch. Before diving into post-CSS or Flexbox or all the new hotness, I thought, what if I take a look about floats and displays again? Oh, that's so boring. But after years of using them, I could keep finding things that were new and unknown for me. Maybe because I had a stronger knowledge. I wanted to know by myself if Flexbox was better than floats, but for that I needed to get it properly. Spoiler alert, Flexbox is awesome. So that's how I started to organize my learning process, setting short and long-term goals. This way I was going to feel that it's easier to accomplish all the things that I wanted to learn. I'd always like to think that the best technique is the one that works for you and your project. So whenever I feel I have a lot of stuff to do, no matter if it's work-related, doing the chores at home, or buying groceries, I love making lists. I really do. It helps me to clearly visualize the amount of work I have and set priorities. And the same goes with my learning process. I made a big list of all the things that I wanted to learn, and I have it at hand always. It can be a to-do list on your phone or a post-it note attached to your computer, anything you want. And it was really funny because the day I started to do this, it was funny to see how each item started to display more sub-items. And that told me something, that when you go from point A to point B during your learning process, you will find a lot of questions, options, subtasks, and items that will appear. And that is a really good moment to start organizing and set steps. Every task you want to do can be broken down into single steps, one thing at a time. Sometimes in the middle of that, you realize that you have to get some extra knowledge before getting to point B. And that might seem that it's delaying you from your goal. But in the meantime, you will learn something new and get to point B with a broader knowledge of the topic. So that's how I started to learn my own pace. It's not an obligation to know all the things. It was good for me to find the ones I was most interested in or needed to apply and grow from that, while keeping an eye on what's out there. Maybe you won't be able to apply all the new things at your project right now, or maybe you don't even need it. But that doesn't mean you can't play with it, so you can get a new technique and learn something new. It's great to have a playground for experimenting new stuff. The site I built for the CSS Conf Argentina was the perfect opportunity for me to get into post-CSS finally, and I was able to apply much better what I have learned about architecture. Whenever you learn something new, think of a way of doing something and test it out, no matter how small you think it is. It's something you're learning, so it is important. You can, for example, create a GitHub account and for projects you're interested in. You can try to learn from that code, and then you can try to write some code yourself. Talking about all this, it's very important to learn when to pause and assimilate knowledge, and don't always be jumping into the next thing too fast. Sometimes your learning steps are going to be really small, that's true, but don't feel frustrated for that. It's good to push yourself to get new concepts, but don't be too harsh to yourself. This might sound obvious, but I had to learn how to take care of my health, not only mentally, but also physically, like eating properly, and not just for the sake of filling up my stomach so I continue working or getting enough sleep. I'm still working on that one. And especially knowing when to stop. I had to learn this the hard way, so it's always good to listen what your body's telling you. Part of the learning process includes making mistakes. It means that you're not trying new things. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of practice but playing around. You're going to break a lot of things. That's true. You can't avoid that. But then you will be able to fix it. So how I applied all this at work? There was a great way of learning I found, maybe the hardest, but the most effective one for me, which was dealing with messy projects at work. It gave me the chance to improve my skills because I had to be really organized with my code. So I'd like to show you 3 examples that taught me a lot to be really organized while dealing with the chaos of messy projects. The first one was a project at work that, because of the client, it had a lot of visual code requirements every day, like twice a day, and it was affecting the code the whole time. And how convenient. At that moment, I wanted to get better at SAS functions and maps. So I started reading and practicing about all that, so I could apply some SAS maps for general look and feel styles and color palette. The end result was a tidy code base and me learning something new. Your case was a website with a lot of developers there working. It also had a lot of layers, pop-ups, custom drop-downs, etc. And it had also a lot of seed index declarations. And one day, one developer was using seed index 200 for one thing, and another one was using for the same thing, I don't know why, seed index 34. It was like the battle of the seed indexes, and we were starting to look at each other with really angry eyes, really. So I started to look for a solution for this. And I came with the idea of creating a function with a loop where I could use a list of descriptive names, like top of the world for overlays or basement for some other elements. And it worked great, but it also gave me the chance to learn more about loops and functions. Win-win again. The last one is not a project, but it's a reality, at least in my country, that is related to slow internet connections. This taught me how to pay more attention to performance. In Argentina, the internet connection is really slow. Not only the internet providers, but also the mobile companies. As the service is really expensive, most of the people can only afford a 3G connection. This is slowly changing, but all in all, it's still like that. So I used this issue as an opportunity to pay more attention to performance. So I could build faster websites and learning more about how CSS can affect the critical path. Assuming that everyone has a fast internet connection is not accurate. We have to build as if the connection is slow. So what do we get with all this? We have to use the chaos as an opportunity to learn something new. It takes time to fix everything, that's true, and sometimes it's tempting to leave it as it is. But if you have time, if you have the chance, try to fix it or at least enhance it, and in the meantime, you will learn something new. Win-win again, it's getting good. So I also made a really good use of bug fixing, as boring as it might seem sometimes or always. If I didn't have to fight with some tricky bugs, I would probably have never learned about some good practices, because we all know that once we fight with a tricky bug, we don't want to deal with it again. Methodologies like BEM, CSS, and especially learning about CSS specificity will help you a lot to improve and level your skills up and make you feel more confident and eager to try new things up, because you will have a broader knowledge. Finally, to come off the community helped me to understand that I was not alone. You will be amazed of how many people are out there who are willing to help and support you. Talk to people on Twitter, meetups, conferences like this one, where you will find a lot of people who will be happy to share their point of view. You will see that there are a lot of people who are out there working really hard too. It also helps to have a mentor, a coding buddy, who you can share your code with. This can turn one day of frustration into a simple 10-minute conversation. It's always good to see others' person's point of view. And also it's more fun to learn with someone else. You can help each other. Help other people. Never underestimate the power of learning while teaching. There's a whole bunch of things I could learn pretty well by helping people, so I consider it a double win. An important note on this, if you're explaining or teaching to someone, let that person experiment and play around. Keep your hands off the keyboard and then let the person try it out. Don't assume that what you're explaining is a piece of cake. it maybe it's so easy for you, that's true, but if you just go and say, oh, that's so easy, shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, and that person has a problem with getting the concept or idea, it will be really frustrating. That happened to me a lot of times. It's not nice. So giving feedback is an important part of the learning and teaching process. Let's make a really good use of it. If it's you the one who needs some help, talk to other people, but don't feel intimidated by their knowledge. We all started from zero. Be confident in your ability to learn. Remember that once were in your place too. The last thing I like to say is that I didn't go to college to learn to code. I was taught by other developers. I was taught by other people who took their time to explain something that was new and unknown for me. Sometimes this person was sitting next to me, and other times it was by reading an article or a blog post. Someone took their time to do it so I could learn something new. And because of this, I really feel the need of giving back somehow. This is about the community. We are all part of it. It's us who build it, and we all have our own experiences, and every experience counts. We learn from each other, and the more we learn, it's our responsibility to also learn how to teach and help other people. That's the best way we are going to make a better and more inclusive web each day. Thank you.